and during presentations, because it just works better. People don't get interrupted, and things like noise in the background doesn't happen. We're business first. We're casual, if it's okay to get up and go do something, if you need something to do to work and have to be gone for 15 minutes, just do it. We have a very informal position on attendance and so forth. Business language just seems to work. No politics. Those also seem to work very well. We really don't want to have any battles around those kind of things and so forth. The meeting will be recorded, and we're going to post it to the Mighty Networks, which is a very important part of this. We have the Mighty Networks for a repository of all sorts of things. And as we look at this and look at all the different things that are come, that Mighty Networks is going to get larger and larger and larger. And we probably will need to break out some other initiatives as we learn more in this journey. Another ground rule that I strongly, firmly believe is let's keep the prospects confidential. If you're working on a new position, don't share it with the people who are also COOs like you. That just isn't right, because unfortunately, the world is not perfect and poaching does happen, and we don't want to have that happening in the COO initiative. I want to acknowledge and introduce the people who are making this all happen. First off, Laura Weichel. Laura is the COO Forum's second in command, and she's been with us for 13 years, and she is our Executive Vice President. Based in Greater Atlanta, she is responsible for leading the many and various activities of Chief Operating Officer Business Forum, COO Forum organization, and leadership overseeing all chapters, chapter directors, and members. She is a wonderful, upbeat, and visionary colleague who creates extraordinary outcomes and successes. Fiona Murray is new to our organization, based in Florida, and she is handling the point on the administration of the COO Executives in Transition. And those of you who are in that particular arena, you will be interacting with Fiona as well. Although she's new, she's done very, very good work with us, and we're very pleased to have her. We feel very fortunate. We have 3 thought leaders to introduce, which is wonderful. Kaylan is the COO of ThinkShot, a digital agency based in Portland, Oregon, that builds websites and digital tools for nonprofits. She has spent the last decade plus in the world of EdTech, SaaS, and digital agencies, wearing many hats. But the one that suits her best are organizational development and project management. In her free time, she volunteers with ChickTech as a way to inspire more girls and women to join the tech industry, and Family Forward Oregon in order to drive policy changes that better support working families. When she's ready to unwind, Kaylan loves discovering family-friendly wineries throughout the Wilmette Valley with her husband and preschooler. And Kaylan is a new member from Portland, Oregon, and we're thrilled she's part of our COO Forum. Also, next I'd like to introduce Dr. Juan Montermoso. As the president of Montermoso Associates, a high-tech consultancy, and co-founder of Silicon Valley Alliances, a leadership development group, Dr. Juan Montermoso has, for the past 11 years, helped a number of companies like Cisco and Visa achieve strategic advantage through effective marketing and integrated planning. In addition, his pro bono planning and branding work with the nonprofits such as the Humane Society of Silicon Valley and the Stanford Early Life Stress Program resulted in Juan being named the Harvard Business School's 2012 Volunteer of the Year. With a Yale undergraduate degree and a doctorate in business administration from Harvard Business School, Juan also serves as a professor of practice in marketing at Santa Clara University, drawing on more than 24 years of HP and international experience to enhance the competence and conscience of tomorrow's business professionals. In his leisure hours, Juan enjoys biking, strumming his guitar, and cheering for any Boston sports team. Juan also has, for the last decade, has participated with the COO Forum as a chapter director in Silicon Valley. And Paul Herrerias. Paul Herrerias is the managing director of Comhar Partners San Francisco office. He has over 30 years of experience in executive search and leadership consulting. As a chief financial officer specialist, Paul leads the Comhar Partners CFO and financial executives practice group. He also coaches and mentors chief operating officers and executive teams. Prior to his Comhar Partners, Paul was trained as both a CPA and an organizational development human resources consultant. Paul firmly believes that teams build businesses, not individuals. In his spare time, you might find Paul running through the mountain trails, brewing his own beer, and taking pictures of the world. And we are also blessed to have Paul as chapter director for the Marin-Sonoma area of Northern California. And Paul, I'm going to throw it to you because you're up. And thank you, all three of you, for taking time out of your busy schedules to share this with the COOs in a transition.
Thank you, Bill. No, it's definitely our pleasure to be here, and we're thrilled to be able to share with everybody and give back a little bit. You know, these are trying times for many people and families and communities, and so if we all help each other, we can all stand tall. So one of the things we want to do today is give people some insights on how to do so, particularly in your career and in a potential job search situation. So one of the things that really helps you to be successful in making transitions in your job search is to know your personal brand. So today we're going to focus a little bit on that and talk about first being aware that you have a personal brand and what is a personal brand. And second, to get a little bit more confidence around how to build your brand or polish your brand or manage your brand. And then thirdly, how to use that to go out and compete in the marketplace. So those are the three learning objectives for us today: awareness, confidence, and performance. So with that, we have a little poll. Is that right? Coming up, Laura? Or
yes. I'm going to go ahead and launch that. Hi, everyone. Good morning. So like Paul said, we're really eager to talk to you all about personal brand, and something that would really help us as we're getting ready to share time with you this hour is to have a better understanding of where you all are at in terms of personal brand. So I'm going to launch a poll right now that you can see on the screen. So what we'd love to know is what your comfort level is. So if you could just take a few seconds, if you're experienced with it, familiar, just learning, or uncertain about it. So I'll give about 20 seconds for that, and then we'll show the results. Great, they're coming in. Thanks everybody for participating. I'll give it about 10 seconds. Perfect. Okay, I'm going to end the poll. So it looks like the vast majority of the group is familiar. So understanding the concepts of personal brand, and have used it a couple times. So we're really glad to know that. That's really helpful. Thanks for sharing. And hopefully everyone is able to really get something from this. I'm going to stop sharing, and then I'm going to turn it back over to Juan.
Thank you very much, Kaylan. I see that many of you are familiar with personal brand. And so in this segment, what I'd like to do is to raise your awareness, our awareness of what a personal brand means and some of the core elements that go into it. But first of all, let's make sure we understand why a personal brand matters. Many of you are familiar with the concept of branding. It's often called a unique promise of value. A personal brand allows you to distinguish yourself with that unique promise of value. And it's only you that has that bundle of characteristics of experience and capabilities. That bundle becomes valuable to other organizations, especially as as you move into positions of responsibility like being a COO. So that value is important to build and to manage, because it is your entry and leverage to a successful career and success in life. But let's think about personal brands. What are some of the past instances where we've seen personal brands in action? Here are three probably well-known personalities, figures in the world. Person on the left, I believe most of you, especially if you're in high tech, recognize him as Bill Gates. If you're old enough, you remember that he was one of the early developers of Microsoft Windows. If you've come across him later in your life, perhaps you're familiar with his philanthropic foundation. Nevertheless, a personal brand is one that he has developed around expertise, whether it's technical expertise or expertise in the area of philanthropy. Our second personality in the middle is probably one you've seen often on TV. She's a TV host, a very strong personality. And if you think about her brand, her unique promise of value, I think many people would agree that what she really exudes is empathy. And that empathy translates into success in dealing with people, in bringing out the best in other persons. The last person, perhaps you haven't seen his picture as often, or perhaps you have. He is, of course, the Dalai Lama, a religious leader. Perhaps you admire him for that. But across the world, I think many, many people think of his brand as one that is built on integrity. What I want to point out is that these branding examples indicate some value that is embedded along with that person. And that's something that you yourself have. Perhaps you have expertise, perhaps you have empathy, perhaps you have integrity. I hope you have integrity, but more important, there are some other unique characteristics that are important. Characteristics that speak to your own personal brand. Let's look at what that embodies. Your personal brand can be summarized in what I call a personal brand statement. Now, many of you perhaps have developed variations of this. This is just one form, which I think captures the essence of what your personal value proposition is that builds your personal brand. First of all, your personal brand has to be aimed at a target audience, a chosen organization, perhaps the organization you currently work with, perhaps the organization you're looking to work for. And what you offer is a set of perceived capabilities. That is the core of your value proposition. But more important than what you offer is why organizations would need to have you as a COO. What are the unique values that you bring? What are the benefits that you provide to that organization based on your perceived capabilities? You put that together. If you can summarize your brand in this kind of personal statement, then you've established in your own mind, start to build awareness of what you can offer. And that awareness can then be translated into communication, into your resume, and into other activities that will guide you along your career search. But of course, you need to manage this personal brand. You need to polish it, etc. What are some of the approaches you might use to understand your brand? How do you gain awareness? Places to start might include asking others. For instance, references, your past bosses, colleagues at work or in volunteer organizations. You can also tap into advisors, mentors, your own personal network or professional network. These people help provide some metrics, some criteria against which you can measure what you've done and what you hope to do. Another important resource for gaining awareness are your own family members. Now, sometimes we overlook them because we live with them. We think, yes, we know them, they know us. It is the fact that they know you that perhaps they know your habits of mind. They know what you're good at. They know what perhaps you like to avoid. And those are the things that you can then build on to start to develop your brand. Don't forget, there are a myriad assessment tools, career advice tools. We'll talk perhaps a little bit about them later. But the key is to also use whatever is available online and offline to measure how you are today. Finally, if you've tapped all those sources, you can even Google yourself. Once you put all that together, you gain an understanding of your strengths and your weaknesses. Of course, you'd like to build on your strengths, but it's also important to be aware of your vulnerabilities. Those vulnerabilities, those weaknesses are things that you can address with your strengths, or perhaps point out they're not really vulnerabilities and weaknesses. They're things that you are working on, or they are things that help you reach out to other people in the organization. Take those strengths and weaknesses, develop a story, build a narrative, and improve that narrative over time with the experience that you gain. This is how you can start to build and manage your brand, to gain an awareness of what your brand is. But of course, you need to be confident about the story you're telling. And so I'd like to turn the floor back over to Kaylan to talk about that second element, not just awareness, but confidence about your personal brand. All yours, Kaylan.
Thanks, Juan. I appreciate that. So I think we all can agree that job searching can be really hard, brutal, in fact. So I'd love to talk a little bit about some of the ways we can build confidence as part of this process. Continuing off of what Juan shared, as we think about building confidence in your personal brand, I would really encourage you to think about the aspects of yourself or your work that you feel especially proud of. What questions can you ask yourself to get at the root of your brand? Here are a few ideas. Starting with the very tactical, what are the industries that get you excited to go to work? Which specialties have you developed that allow you to feel grounded in a particular expertise? What wins and mistakes have you learned that you are eager to take into your next role? And businesses all around the world are recognizing that it pays to be more inclusive of diverse voices. What aspects of your self-identification and lived experience are important parts of your story and leadership philosophy? And what are the values that have built and sustained your leadership style? And there are many, many more that you can think about as pride points in your story. Thank you. So there's an often cited article from the Harvard Business Review. Many of you might be familiar with it. And it's called The Second in Command Misunderstood Role of the Chief Operating Officer. And it's almost 15 years old, but it still has a lot of relevance today as we think about the types of roles COOs play in organizations. Something that really speaks to me about this article is the idea that there are no clear set of guidelines for success. People of many backgrounds and with many answers to the questions that we just talked through are able to thrive as COOs. And that gives you a tremendous opportunity to decide what type of COO you have confidence in being, what type you want to be, and then how do you want to shape your job search accordingly. This article finds that there are 7 types of COOs. I've listed them here. The executor would be a COO who comes in to execute on the ideas and vision of the CEO. The change agent might be someone who's coming in to turn an organization around. The mentor is someone who has a lot of experience in an industry that maybe the CEO lacks. The other half would be someone who complements the style, personality, or experience of the CEO. A partner is somebody who might be coming in to be kind of a co-leader with the CEO. And the heir apparent, someone who's being groomed to become the CEO. And then the article defines the MVP as someone who is too much of a rock star to lose, so they need to find a leadership opportunity. there are 7 here, but I think we all know that there are many more, right? Because there are hybrids of these, and there are different needs and different versions at different organizations, depending on the scope and opportunity. However, there's tremendous value in you identifying the type of leader you are, the type you want to be, and then targeting that role. Confidence goes a long way when it comes to job searches. So the more clear you can be about your value to your next organization as a COO, the more others will pick up on that confidence as well. Okay, time for a pep talk. So you're going to take all the confidence in your story and in the story you want to tell about your personal brand and go talk to more people. Juan encouraged you to talk to your networks to better understand your current brand. And I'm going to encourage you to go back to those same people after you've done some homework and are ready for the next phase and ask them for a pep talk, a real one. Tell them where you want to be, why you're confident that that's the right place for you, and let them help build you up so that you're ready for the next phase. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Paul.
Okay. And I'll ask you to, there we go. I'm going to start sharing my screen here so that you can see some of the tools that we're going to use to do so. Can you see my screen now? You see the elements of personal brand?
Yes.
Okay, good. So when we start talking about your personal brand and you put into application the things that Kaylan and Juan have been talking about, then the rubber has to meet the road somewhere. And these are all the different areas that you could use. So these are the tools that you could use to transfer that brand, communicate that brand, and put together some of the details. So when we talk about the brand, when candidates that I'm working with for searches for C-level positions, when they come at me, some of the things that they're trying to emphasize, to be competitive in the marketplace is their industry expertise or how smart they are in their business or the size of companies that they've worked with, the type of structures and organizations that they're an expert in, or maybe the type of culture that they build as leaders, their leadership qualities or characteristics, or maybe it's the functional skills. Or maybe it's an accumulation of all of those. So for example, if somebody's a COO for healthcare industries, they may have a brand that says, I can really help put structure into organizations and build their systems and procedures so that they can grow the business and build a sustainable enterprise. So working with their leadership, their industry, their organizational structure, their functional expertise, maybe their relationship with clients, their ability to open relationships with new clients or to manage them successfully. Other people come and they talk about their brand as a global executive or their ability to expand internationally. So geography and location become a piece of the branding repertoire, or how much time they dedicate in the job, a 24/7 executive. Other elements of your personal brand could be your personal character. So we talked about integrity, but what are some of the other elements of your personal character that might get their attention and be part of this brand? The sense of loyalty or the sense of being able to challenge the status quo. Wide variety of elements here that you can work with as you design that personal brand. And as a hint, you can customize this as well for a opportunity by how well you communicate the different pieces of it.
Paul, sorry to interrupt. Could you please share your screen as the full screen mode? Sounds like some folks are having some trouble reading it.
All righty.
Thank you.
Does that help? Make that a little bit bigger.
Thanks.
Okay. Yeah, so these are some of the tools you have for using. You know, where do you convey this brand? We talk about conveying your brand, your resume, your cover letter, the email signatures that you use. You take a look at that. Every time you send an email, what's the tagline you use that reinforces that brand that you have? Wonderful opportunity. In LinkedIn and your profile, you have the ability to put a few key words underneath your name. That's where you want to reinforce that personal brand as well. You know, chief executive that knows how to grow operations and make a more efficient organization. You know, 6-10 words is all that's necessary sometimes to really convey that brand that you have. Your picture, is it showing a picture that's in alignment with your brand? Is it, you know, cool and hip and tech, or is it more buttoned down and professional and consultative? The recommendations that you have on your LinkedIn profile, who are you using for recommendations? When people say, yeah, I'll give you a recommendation, what do you want me to talk about? Give them the elements of your brand and ask them, please comment on these things that will enter into my recommendation on LinkedIn that the whole world is going to see. Boy, that goes a long ways in selling your brand for you. Likewise, in your references or in the people that you even have in your network, make sure that that's reinforcing your industry, functional, location, brand elements. When you're interviewing, oftentimes at this level, you're given homework assignments. If you're fortunate enough to get to that point in the process, you know, if you were the COO of this business, what would you do short-term, medium-term, long-term? You know, they're just looking for half a dozen PowerPoint slides, but this is an opportunity for you to reinforce that brand that you bring to the table as well. Make sure you look and dress like the part as well. That reinforces your brand. And maybe I put trade or professional associations. Maybe you're a member of certain organizations that reflect on your brand as well. So these are the tools that you have to work with. And then, you know, competing to win. So, okay, you're working on your brand, but now how do you get out there and win with it? And that's, you know, as Juan and Kaylan have said, know yourself first, build the foundation, design your brand, pull these levers that we just talked about, these different elements of conveying your brand, and use your brand consistently to reinforce that message. You know, the people, there's 1,000 people competing for the jobs, so you get just a few key moments to present that brand. When I look at a resume, I will spend a couple seconds on each resume. If I'm going through a wide variety, or maybe LinkedIn profiles, I may have to go through 300 LinkedIn profiles to identify 20 that I'm going to focus on. And I'm looking for that brand right away, immediately. So you want it to just pop out there for yourself. So design it, communicate it, be visible, and keep practicing with it until you get really comfortable. I work with a lot of CFOs. They're not comfortable with branding and selling themselves typically. So it does take a lot of practice to do that. One of the comments you'll see is showing up your defenses. You know, you convey your strengths, but you also want to let people know where you're deficient. How have you mitigated that? What have you done about that? Who have you surrounded yourself with on your team to mitigate some of the shortcomings you have, or areas where you're just not interested in? So you'll talk about that first before they bring it up. Here's some examples of personal brands that candidates have used. So you have a chance to take a look at some of these here. I build teams that inspire confidence, high performance, and loyalty. This was a COO candidate that I worked with recently. I build the teams that achieve strategic sales goals consistently. That was a salesman. I'll drop down to a CFO. If I ran the trains, they'd be on time and profitable. And I was coaching a sales guy one time about his brand, his statement to put on his resume. And I was giving him examples. And I shared with them the one about running the trains and being on time, being profitable. And he tried to use the same one. It didn't hold at all for him. And if you looked at everything else in his resume and his LinkedIn profile, it had nothing to do with that. So I had to coach him to go back and think about, no, what are your strengths and what makes you unique that's supported here with your background and your experience. And that's when he came up with the one above about building teams that achieve strategic sales goals consistently. That was his secret sauce. The last one is I recruit nationally to assemble teams that build organizations by studying culture, strategy, and processes. And that's me. That's my personal brand. So now what I'd like to do is invite you all to a breakout session, break you into rooms, and talk about how have you developed your personal brand? What are some of your experiences in that process? So now I'll turn it over to Fiona or Laura to break us into subgroups, and I'll give you 7 to 10 minutes to talk about that and share with one another how you've built your personal brand, what tools you've used, how's that working for you? And then we'll come back into the main session. And when we break out, just find your own facilitator in the group, and then find what we'll call a reporter who will report back to the main group after your session has ended. So there you go. Have a lot of fun with that one.
Thanks, Paul. I've almost got the room set up. I just want to do a check real quick about the opportunity to have kind of a good division between directors and participants. So give me just one more second.
Okay, and I'm going to stop sharing, and I'll let Laura pick it back up again. Thank you, Kaylan.
Okay, you'll all get a warning when it's 1 minute left, and we'll see you in a little bit.
Okay, I agree.
Well, that was fun. Anybody else feel like they got challenged in their breakout room?
I think, Paul, that at least in my breakout session, we had, I think, a fairly robust conversation. I think that's true with all the breakout sessions. I'm pretty sure.
Paul, I found myself being inspired in my group, so I think we all can go off now and have a nice brand assembly.
Excellent. Do we have any reporters who want to report back from their groups?
Well,
sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
You can go in anywhere. Well, we had a group of 4, Adam and Mark and Jeff Faber. I think what we found for ourselves was that we had a better understanding of what this whole branding process is. A couple of us had a little bit more experience and a couple of us had a little less, but it clearly, when you think about it from the people who work for us, there is something there for each of us that we can say, this is what we do in an organization. And I think this process, this thinking about it from a branding perspective is very helpful.
Okay.
Yeah, we had, well, 2 of us and Paul in the group, and Stephanie was the other person in the group. And I think for both of us, we used, contemplating our lives and about what our real value and personal brand is. And Stephanie had a lot of experience in government work and process and cross communications among teams. And I was more on sort of the culture development side. And so we are both COOs with different talents and focus. And there's room for everybody, and we're both working on it.
Good. Yeah, the challenge is moving from the awareness to confidence to competing, and then going back and testing it. How did that feel? How did we do?
I'll just report out on our group. I was with Chris and Laura and Juan, and I'll kind of focus around the common theme, which is that we're talking about pivoting from one industry perhaps to another, and how do you use those transferable skills to make that pivot. And so how do you tell that unique story, and moving from maybe what you're trying to sell and widgets to what you're passionate about. And how do you communicate that? And then one of the bigger themes too is just when you're making that pivot is how do you orbit around adaptability and flexibility, especially in this dynamic market. And so really it was kind of how do we start doing that and thinking about that. I think we had familiarity, of course, with personal branding, and just on the journey and how do we make it better at this point. So that's kind of where we're at. And I don't know if you wanted to add anything too, Chris, if there was something you wanted to share.
I mean, I think the only thing I would just add is, we're both in this place where really discovering our passions is kind of the key challenge. We're looking to leverage our skills and looking to be adaptable, but I think first and foremost, we're looking to really find what it is that keeps us excited about a change in our career. And that's, balancing that with kids and COVID and life is a pretty tough challenge, but I think that's the key sort of component of creating your personal brand statement, is really identifying what you really love.
Sure. Yeah, I'll report out from my group. It was me, Bill Shepard, Fiona Murray, and Ron Lacey. And actually it was a really interesting group, right? Because we had 4 people, all of whom have come from different places. So we really got a chance to talk about how our own core experiences brought us to where we are today. We also spent some time kind of looking at, Paul's suggestions as a way to how we, our personal stories reflect back to, one of the things that Paul had on the list of ways to approach your brand. And the good example was, what are your weaknesses and how do you prepare for them as you're out there in the world, and how do you mitigate these weaknesses? So it was a great group. We had a great discussion, and really was a lot of fun.
Excellent. Good. Thank you for bringing up the word passion. So important, in that personal brand. And I was thinking about that too. Your brand is a combination of your passions and your skills and your experiences. And the brand is this promise of the experience that your next employer is going to feel and see. So it's almost like we have to create the brand, communicate the brand, and then ask ourselves, how are we doing with delivering on that brand? Let's do some self-assessment, and maybe talk to other people to see, is my brand relevant? Is it resonating? And then hold yourself accountable to your brand so that you're consistently delivering it and winning.
Thanks, Paul. We'd love to open up the floor for any questions from anyone about the content or about your search. Yeah, Chris.
So I have a question about ageism and how you should consider experience and talking about your experience versus coming across as someone who's old, an okay boomer type character, right? I can't see everyone on the screen here, but I don't think many of us are spring chickens. So we have a lot of experience, but certainly from what I've been seeing, there is, especially in some of the younger startups, the sense that the older generation can't function in sort of today's work environment. So how do you balance that feeling of ageism with practical experience that we've all had from our careers?
Well, I'll throw it out there. We talked about, what is it that you're trying to brand? So it's like the magician who's trying to show you a magic trick, trying you to focus on this hand, but it's really this hand that's doing the magic. So focus on the strengths, focus on the things you want them to focus on, and keep them so occupied that they don't have time to think about the fact that, hey, you're over 39 years old, because they have a problem they want to solve. They have a desire they want to achieve. Keep giving them that. And that's what your branding is doing, is keeping them focused on how you're going to help solve those problems. You can't change your age, so we can't worry about it. So focus on what we can control and focus them on what you want them to know as well. And in package, we talked about defensiveness as opposed to always being on the offense. So the defensiveness is, you can't get the wisdom that I have without being this age. You can't have the number of experiences in different types of cultures and challenges without having this many years of experience. You can't build the network that I've built overnight. Spring chickens don't have 5,000 people LinkedIn that they can tap into. So keep using your risk management.
Let me add a little bit to what Paul has talked about. When you look at your personal brand, one of the things you should be thinking about is what kind of organization you're talking with or talking to. And it's important to think about in two ways. One is the organization itself may be very, very narrow in its thinking, and what you can bring is a wider perspective. Whether that perspective is, I have international experience, I have industry experience, I have managed large groups, whatever it is that's a strength in your side and that has come because of your many varied experiences. That's what you should do. Try and expand their purview so it becomes a new criteria. It's like the old situation where you, as a vendor, you were always trying to influence the criteria by which your product or service was being chosen. Try and bring in the fact that your experience should be part of the criteria. The other thing I think, and this is more from your personal side, is you can't be all things to all people. And there are certain organizations that you have to make this judgment that perhaps you don't want to work for because of their attitude or because of their perspective. Don't waste your time on them. Work on the ones that have some potential. It'll be more rewarding, and it'll be better and hopefully more fruitful in your transition search.
And Juan, that's a good lead-in too to next week's session, where we're going to talk about your search strategy. So we're putting your needs and desires in your career path together with, your brand, and then identifying your target markets, and then looking at how we go approach those markets. So to Juan's point, we want to be very selective at that point in time, and go after areas where we can win and we can be successful and we can have fun and be able to realize our passions. Bill, do you want to talk about the future sessions as well?
Yeah, I'll wrap up. How's that? Just quickly, yes, and what Paul we have up on the screen, but Paul Herrerias and Catherine King. Catherine is the chapter director in Detroit, Michigan. And she is going to join this event as well next week. And then the week after, we have Carol Kramer and Margaret Ritchie. And Margaret is in Minneapolis as the chapter director, and Carol is a specialist in the branding and LinkedIn coaching. That's a don't miss. We have a really high-powered a person in Carol who is really involved with what we're doing here, and we're delighted she's stepped up to join us for that session with Margaret. So both the 6th and the 13th are going to be terrific sessions. I want to thank everybody for participating and sharing. I want to thank Fiona and Laura for all the execution activities, and Paul and Juan and Kaylan for great presentations and follow-up, just wonderful. And realize that the contacts, if you need to reach the COO Forum, is Laura Weichel, Fiona Murray, and me. And we do have the Mighty Network, which is really our anchor for depositing things that come in that we notice for COOs in transition. And that will continue to build and be strong. This is the second week we've been in this activity. We're learning and growing. And I appreciate that. I think we had a terrific session, and we're going to continue to learn more about how we can serve the COOs and second in command executives. Warm wishes for a great week. Thank you all for coming in, taking this. It's great.
Excellent
session. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Bill. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.